Orleans Planning Board. I'm joined this afternoon by Debbie Oakes, our Vice Chair, Mariah Lestage, our Clerk, Lynn Eichholt, and Peter Polimas from the staff. I'm joined by George Meservey, Director of Planning and Community Development, and in the audience is Elizabeth Jenkins, our Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development. So first item on the agenda is public comment, and we'll take any public comment that has to do with anything not on tonight's agenda. Is there anybody online, Peggy?
No hands raised.
Okay, great. Then we'll go to correspondence. George, please.
We just have one piece of correspondence that is notification from the Cape Cod Commission that the Orleans Comprehensive Plan, Orleans 2050, has been certified as consistent with the regional policy plan. So that is the final step for the comp plan before we start to implement it. I've given you each a copy of the hard copy of the plan. I thought it came out rather nice, and this is a plan that will be used by the town, so well done.
Great. Thank you very much, George. And thank you all for the efforts going into this comprehensive plan. It was unanimously voted on at the Cape Cod Commission when George and I were there a few weeks ago for the presentation. And words from them were they really enjoyed it, one of the best they've seen. Visually stunning, I think, was some of the quotes. So, and the content goes along with that as well. So, congratulations to all. First, or next item on the agenda is approval not required plan, Brian and Cynthia Sullivan, 24 and 18 Sturbridge Road. George would like to lead us through that, please.
Yeah, we have, this is an equal area land swap, a simple approval not required plan for two lots that pre-exist and have houses on them. Jeff Cronin's the engineer who drew the plan, and I'm sure can answer any questions, but from our perspective, the plan meets the filing requirements. The filing fee has been received, and there do not appear to be any land use questions or issues with regard to this A&R plan.
Jeff, welcome. Do you have any comments for us?
I'll just run through it quickly. You guys have already read, pretty much what it's on. I'm from Ryder and Wilcox. I'm representing Brian and Cynthia Sullivan, the trustees of the Cynthia L. Sullivan Revocable Trust of 24 Sturbridge, and Anthony Sepe, trustee of the Anthony M. Sepe Living Trust at 18 Sturbridge. I'm here to request an endorsement of an approval not required, showing an equal area land swap. Without really going more into it, this land swap kind of makes sense. It will provide a more usable and sensible side yard for both parties, as well as increase the setbacks to the side yard lot line from both houses. Other than that, it should be fairly straightforward.
Great. Any comments or questions from the board? None? None? Well, this looks like a pretty straightforward square up of two triangles into a square.
Exactly.
So if we want to go ahead, I'll take a motion to endorse. Somebody wants to make that motion?
I move we endorse the plan entitled Plan of Land Situated in Orleans, Massachusetts, prepared for the Cynthia L. Sullivan Revocable Trust, prepared by Ryder and Wilcox Incorporated, dated June 26, 2026, as an approval not required plan.
Any discussion? A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. And since we are all here and Francesca is missing, Peter, you can vote tonight, please. So all those in favor of improving the endorsement for the plan of land situated in Orleans prepared by Cynthia L. Sullivan Revocable Trust, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed? You're approved.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I'll let this go. It's gonna, your signature. If you would just sign here on behalf of the board, so I'll,
And a date?
yes. Kind enough, I'll take that pen from you.
Just use a
Kind of
regular pen.
just, sign the approval form here, and.
Same thing here.
you know,
And this is a date here.
Jeff, here you go. Please take it before we smudge it.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll be very happy.
Every day.
We need a date here also?
We're good.
Oh, we're good? Okay, great.
Says it right on the letter. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay. Next item on the agenda is another A&R. This is a approval not required plan for 170 Route 6A LLC. George, please walk us through that, please.
This is a division of land in the limited business district of a small parcel that currently exists and has a house on it. In the limited business district, there are no minimum lot sizes or frontage requirements. So your only review here is to look at the accessibility of the lot, and it is situated on Route 6A. Mr. Cole is here to speak to the application if you have any questions. But while this is significantly different than the matter you just took up, there is no reason to withhold your endorsement of this plan under zoning.
Welcome, Matt. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great.
With me is Rob Gugliotta from Merrill Engineering on the Zoom.
Rob, welcome to the meeting. Matt, if you'd like to make any comments, that'd be great for the board.
Happy to answer any questions. It's a really simple division to create 2 equal lots.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Then, if there's no other business, then Mariah, if you would like to read that, please.
Yes.
Please make a motion.
I move that we endorse the plan entitled Plan of Land, number 170, Route 6A, Orleans, Massachusetts, prepared for the 170 Route 6A LLC, prepared by Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors, dated June 30th, 2026, as an approval not required plan.
Thank you, Mariah. I need a second.
Second?
Thank you. If no other discussion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of endorsing the plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? You are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Same thing here. And you're way over there now. This is out of the way, and I need signatures on the form and the plan. I don't know, you wanna let that dry before you throw it away?
There we go.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the reorganization of officers. I'd like to start off by a couple of announcements concerning our organization is that our clerk, Mariah Lestage, has entered her resignation from the board, and her last day would be tomorrow, and that would be officially coming before the select board at their meeting tomorrow evening. So it's not official yet, but it's essentially official. So we wanted to thank Mariah for her participation, contributions to the planning board all these years, and especially in the last year for the zoning project that we did last summer and fall, and the very, very successful comprehensive plan. A lot of work involved from all, and we want to thank you for your contributions for the last many years on the planning board. And good luck.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank
Why are you
for the
leaving
Stay for the whole meeting. Stay for the whole meeting.
Why are you leaving us?
I'm running out of bandwidth. My parents' health has been, it's been taking more and more of my time. So I'm just finding that I don't have the bandwidth to do all the homework I need to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not fleeing to another committee.
It's not because she doesn't like us.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
And then and thank you again. The other announcement I'd like to make, and that will be effective tomorrow night, is the elevation of Peter Polimas from associate to full member of the planning board. And that happens tomorrow night at the select board meeting, pending any catastrophes, but welcome aboard in that respect, and that's great. So with those two items of change coming up, we have the reorganization that we normally do every year. We missed last year because of projects going on, but each year we wanted to reorganize and rotate the chair position, the vice chair position, and the clerk position so that we keep refreshing ourselves as we go through the years. My position as chair, I wanted to make a sort of a unusual request of the board and pose it as a proposal that instead of doing individual votes for the chair, the vice chair, and the clerk, I would propose a slate of candidates for those positions, and also provide the opportunity, certainly for any one of you, to supply your own ideas for candidates or a candidate. But my thought is to do it in one vote with a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk. And I would propose that we nominate Debbie Oakes as chair, that we nominate Lynn Eicholt as vice chair, and that we have Francesca Galassi be our clerk. And I would throw that out to the board for their comments, and certainly entertain any other candidates for any other positions.
Seconded. No, I know.
It is a proposal. It is a proposal.
Teasing.
So,
I think it's good, though.
any other discussion?
I'm fully on board with that.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds
So
good.
then, with the proposal to do our reorganization, I propose that we have Debbie Oakes as chair, Lynn Eicholt as vice chair, and Francesca Galassi as clerk. And if we have a second, and if there's no other discussion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of that slate of officers proceeding forward, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Since there are none, congratulations to our new chair, Debbie Oakes, and the gavel is yours.
You got big shoes to fill.
I know,
I'm sure you can do it.
Francesca, just never miss a meeting, you never know what's going to happen.
I don't see her up there, so she didn't join us yet, but,
You
you know,
gotta-
when you're not
gotta
here,
elect
you
it
get
to a
volunteered for
position.
things.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. The next item on our agenda are the signature letters to the Boston Land Court and Registry of Deeds.
Debbie, I presumptuously prepared signature letters with the new slate of officers in case they were voted, so we could do it tonight. If the board would just pass these around and each sign each copy and pass them around, all members sign, there's a place with your name on it. Those will go, these letters go to the Land Court and to the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds, where they keep your authorized signatures on record, and the letter authorizes the chairman to sign all documents on behalf of the full board.
So I don't sign that, right? Because I'm not a member.
You do sign because you will vote in some
You're a voting member tonight.
aspects,
so you
yeah.
can sign it, yeah.
And I think I will probably wait to get Francesca's signature on there too, so we have the full slate, so there is no question.
Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is the representative for committee assignments. We have 2 vacancies on our
Signature.
assigned committee representative lists. Those would be for wastewater management advisory committee and the water and sewer commissioners board. Mary was on both of those committees, and
Okay.
she is no longer on the board. So we're going to need to find a replacement for that. The community preservation committee and economic development committee. I'm just wondering, is it, if we might want to wait and discuss this at our next meeting when
When we get
hopefully Francesca's here and going to give Peter a chance to acclimate as a full board member. And we can maybe think about how we're going to fill all of these positions. The representative members are people, are representatives on committees that are required to have a representative of the planning board on those committees. These, we've been calling them the liaison committees, were just more personal interest and a point of contact to these particular committees, and we might want to, talk about how that would work going forward. I believe there are rumors anyway that there might be some reorganizations at the select board level of, theoretically, of committees. We might want to wait until that is finalized, until we decide which committees we need to have a direct appointment of a planning board member to serve. Does that seem okay? Yeah?
Debbie, I could just comment on the, with regard to the wastewater advisory committee. They have nearly a full slate of members, and there is nothing that is pressing that the planning board needs to participate in the next 2 weeks,
Okay.
or the next 4 weeks, actually. Yeah, so I think that's okay if you defer, and I don't think the CPC is even meeting in the summertime.
Exactly, and, I mean,
Will we have new members here? You had said we have one new member coming, right?
So, in theory, it hasn't happened yet, but I interviewed someone last week who is supplying their citizens' interest form. They have to be formally interviewed by the select board, and that hasn't been scheduled yet. So there is someone, I believe, coming, and I don't know when that's gonna happen, but it'll be sooner rather than later.
Okay,
So we'll be looking for one more associate at that point.
okay.
I was going to say, we do have 2 openings.
Yeah, I thought we had the lawyer who goes to the zoning board all the time.
And he removed himself from consideration.
Okay,
Yeah, he had other things he wanted to do, so.
okay.
So are we in agreement that we're going to table this discussion at least until our next meeting? We can put it back on the agenda at that point. Okay, and here's to the real meat of this meeting, which is the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. And Elizabeth is going to walk us through the current state of the proposal.
Thank you, Chair Oaks. It is my pleasure to be here. Elizabeth Jenkins, Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development. So yes, back again to talk about zoning. And just to recap where we've been at the last couple of meetings, the purpose of this effort is to continue to comprehensively review our zoning bylaw with an eye towards a couple of goals. Number one, ensuring it is updated within the context of an ever-changing Massachusetts general law, the state statute, the Zoning Act, and evolving zoning law, and also looking at updating and modernizing the code. We know that land uses are ever-changing, and certainly we also want to look to promoting investment as an economic development effort to make sure we're doing everything we can to open the door and make it easy for new businesses who would like to call Orleans home. So obviously the first phase of this was the reorganization that we brought forward at the fall town meeting last year, which is now complete and in effect. So now we've sort of gone again section by section and looked at places where we can make changes, some small, some more comprehensive, to our bylaw, knowing the last time we did sort of a complete overhaul or modernization of the bylaw was in the 80s. That was some time ago, just good practice to be able to keep the rules that regulate land use, growth, and investment in our community up to date. So after our last few meetings, we've sort of come to a point where we have organized these into 3 potential articles for fall town meeting. So the article headings are here up in blue. So what I'd like to do is sort of, I think, walk you through each article. Hopefully by now you're mostly familiar. I think there's a couple of surprises towards the end, but mostly we've talked mostly about what has gone into each one of these potential articles. And I would love to get your feedback, not only on the substance, but how you think this could be potentially approached at town meeting to make this successful. And then we could talk about the schedule. I know the select board is going to vote at the meeting. Presumably we'll vote at the meeting tomorrow to set the town meeting date. So then that gives us sort of a very firm schedule leading up to the town meeting. And when that warrant open and closes. So I will just begin at the beginning. So the idea here is that probably the biggest chunk of this is to look at updating our use table and our associated parking regulations. And again, I don't think the primary intention of updating these sections is not to make a dramatic change in direction in terms of how we regulate land uses or where they go, but again, to provide a more streamlined table, a more user-friendly table, one that recognizes that land uses do evolve over time and that maybe the best approach to regulating them is not to try to be specific about what we do want to permit, but permit those uses in broad categories and then call out exceptions to those that we want to more closely regulate, either by prohibiting those uses altogether or by requiring that they get a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So again, this is that table that again comprehensively reorganizes into, again, a table now that has hundreds of different entries calling out things that are very specific. Instead, now categorizing land uses into broader categories, for example, offices, retail sales, personal consumer services, and then again calling out individual land uses that are more strictly regulated under each one of those tables. I know we gave you the associated map this time. Great feedback so far that obviously anytime we publish this table, it's meaningless really without the zoning map. So we will do that in all future iterations of this project. But again, that is the intention. Again, also looking to where we can, trying to think about uses that we do want to encourage here in town and working with our economic development / public information officer added, and you'll see those on page 4. Again, definitions for these broader categories, but also again for some new uses that we would, I think, love to see here in Orleans. Artisan industry being one of those. Again, this idea that I think we have sort of an economic niche here in Orleans where people, are looking to make goods on a small scale and sell those. Not really a use that would fit in under any of our categories, but should somebody want to open up, say, a second Nauset lantern shop, a very successful example of an artisan industry at work, let's make sure that they can we can very clearly put a place for them in our zoning ordinance. So you'll see the new definitions there, and then also going through the code and just sort of cleaning up some of the other things that are old and outdated. I know one of the other uses that we've talked about a lot about trying to recruit our hotels and motels. We have some very strict and fairly antiquated provisions in our code, so striking that section. And then again, just general cleanup associated with the change. So again, associated with that would be a sort of a comprehensive overhaul to the parking regulation. Again, consistently with the changes to the land use table. The intention again here is not to completely overhaul how we think about regulating parking. Somebody asked me the other day, do we even need to regulate parking here in Orleans? Won't people take care of it themselves? I would say yes, we should continue to think about how we provide for parking in our community. But I do think it's an issue that we should be flexible on. So what you see here again is a section that's a chapter of our ordinance that is just largely reorganized and cleaned up. There was a lot of a lot of repeated language.
Simplicity.
No, not that. Maybe a little of that, but not intentionally.
Duplicative was correct.
Duplicative language in the code. But the things we did add to the code, we have underlined here in that conventional red line structure. Again, what we will do a sort of formal red line so everybody can see exactly what went in, what went out, what got moved. But we are calling out anything that is new here. So again, what you see here, new being some flexibility, special permit provisions, I think more clarity on how we calculate both parking space size and provision relative to some of the comments we got from the planning board last time. We did propose a new section 4, and I do just want to take a minute to talk about that because I do think this is one of the more significant changes, which is the idea that in our village center district, so this is a sort of core walkable downtown, the yellow on the zoning map, sort of Main Street and 6A, where we do have a number of public parking lots that essentially we can consider this area a fairly built out environment, and that the buildings that are there, if they are not going to be significantly changed, most of the time what we're seeing here are changes in use. We are not seeing, when we have those cases where it's just a change of use, we assume that what is there will be maintained. So if you're going to put let's say a retail space into what is currently an office within the Village Center District, we're not going to ask you to add more parking because many of the time those buildings can't. They are, they're built out. They are not changing their environment. So that's essentially what number 4 there does. And I would say that's probably the most substantial modification, and again, limited to just that Village Center District where we feel like there is that potential to create this walkable downtown and there is that provision of public parking. Otherwise, the minimum.
Elizabeth, can you
Yeah.
just, I'm sorry. What do you mean by number 4? 164.
So
8.4?
164.8.1, I'm sorry, B4.
B4.
In the Village Center District, parking is required based on the intended use of floor area within a building at construction permitting, and not for the subsequent establishment, change, or expansion of any permitted use or the renovation of any principal building. So if somebody is coming in again and renovating an office building into a retail store in our Village Center District, the idea that they would not have to add additional parking to meet the more intensive parking requirements of a retail use. Certainly if they are rebuilding, if they are doing additional permitting on the site, or let's say redeveloping, creating something new, then they would have to meet the parking requirements for the intended use, but not for what is there existing and not changing.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? So again, the table, it's still very open. I should have led by saying still very open to comment. This is meant to be an iterative process. If you have questions, please ask. Even George and I, as we are going through this, we're keeping our eye open for unintended consequences. And look, already I can see we have some numbering issues on page 9 that we'll clean up. The other thing that we did add in here is I felt that some of the requirements we had, so these are under the new 164-8.4 on landscaping. Again, some of our landscaping requirements could be bolstered a little bit. We just sort of had a statement that said, parking lots should have should have landscaping. So number F was essentially what's currently in here. F was pretty much the only landscaping requirement we had. So we broke this down into essentially landscaping that we would like to see in front yards, along the street, landscape screening where you have a parking area that abuts a residential district. Obviously, you want a more intensive form of screening there. And then interior parking lot landscaping. So you don't just have, again, those like that sea of asphalt, you're requiring landscaping within the parking lot as well. So we broke down our landscaping requirements into those sort of three very distinct categories. But that really is the extent of the changes under Article 2. Again, I think the intention is to, try to respond to more modern land uses and make sure that our code is open, accessible, and accommodating the types of business growth and investment that we want to see here in Orleans. So, any questions on Article 1?
I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm it.
Please.
So anything that was, an O or a P or an SP is still an O, P, or SP. You didn't change any of that, right? Like what's permitted, special permit, not permitted.
That's correct. So across the board, the intention was not to make changes.
That's what I thought.
There are some things that change. So for example, I'll use the example because it's one that I feel like is really important because this is a use that can be difficult here on Cape Cod, but under our wholesale storage and industrial, one of the uses we added was self-storage facility. So those obviously have new O's, SPs, and Ps.
Right.
And that maybe they would have been regulated differently under the code today because we were trying to fit that into something else. So can I make a broad statement and say, yes, you can do, we haven't changed anything, no, because there have been some shifts in how things got regulated. And additionally, again, when you go from regulating, personal services from having, personal services now is meant to encompass a very broad range of uses. Do we feel like in our three main zoning districts, they've stayed largely the same? Yes. But, going from that very, very itemized list to a generalized list, if you're thinking about whatever your land use is in your brain, like, it's important, I think, to think about it in the context of the new table, because, like I said, I don't think we can make a broad statement that say what it says. We haven't changed anything. But the intention, I think the intent and purpose is the same. Do you agree with that, George? Anything else that's jumping out at you?
We broke out some categories that kind of needed a little more definition, like we had auto repair and filling station. So Elizabeth broke it out into auto repair, which stays exactly the same as it was. But for gasoline sales, that's a new category, and we made that a special permit category. I just don't see a situation in Orleans where a gas station goes in without going through a public hearing.
Right.
I think there's some appropriate protective sections in here. I think we probably talked about it previously, what the food and beverage service, it's a better way to categorize all this different kinds of services, because they are evolving, the way restaurants are done. So I'm very comfortable with that, but it breaks it out into where they're allowed by right, and then there's some exceptions where like fast food and formula businesses are kept with the same level of protection they've had before. But, hopefully this is easier for prospective businesses who want to help enliven our downtown to know that they're allowed and encouraged to come in here. And while we value our professional jobs, a person should be able to read the use table and know if they can do something in Orleans.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just the one comment I think that we've made before, but in the whole use table, we want to sort of provide a glossary of terms in it, that's within the code itself, so somebody reading this will know what P means, what O means, what RB and I means, and all of that. We know what it means, but for someone who actually has to use it, do we? Yeah. That it makes it a little bit easier to decipher, uncode what all of this is, so there's no ambiguity in the use of the use table.
Right.
And I also thought that maybe we might want to, if we can, in the code itself, to include the map. Because if we're updating the table, we also can update the map while we're up. So, but it makes that easier if the developer's looking at the Orleans code and wants to know what's what, it's right there.
Right. Yes, and I should have mentioned before that we currently have sent this to our town's legal counsel, and this is under review, so that we are still pending legal review of this. Again, some of the later articles were based on sort of an initial broad review of the zoning, but waiting to get that back from them as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I will. I actually have a few things I wanted to raise. Just out of curiosity, why is not permitted O? How come, could we be bold and say P is permitted and N is not permitted, or N?
Or a yes and no?
Is
Yeah.
not permitted?
Yeah.
Could do that.
Oh, I'm like, what does O stand for?
I've even seen some use tables that just don't put anything, they just leave it blank. So it's very clear that if there's not something in that square, that it's
Outlawed?
not allowed.
Yeah, all I know is the O means nothing to me, except it's a letter in prohibited. And I would, since we're trying to make this readable and usable and understandable, maybe we could start there, saying what's yes and what's no.
Sure.
I support that because I had to look it up too.
I had to go online and look at, anyway.
So we have P, so we would have P for permitted, N for not permitted or prohibited, and SP for special permit.
Right,
Okay.
right? Those are our three options for people?
And M for maybe.
Yeah, if there's an M, let's use that. I'm wondering if there's a way to, and maybe this can be challenging, but legal counsel will help, to introduce with a general statement of intent and purpose, which is, for one thing, it sets your mind to the way you're reading this use table, which is everything's, you can, well, maybe I'm not correct. You can assume it's allowed unless we say it isn't. And it's going to be allowed in certain places and not in other places. Or whatever the broader
Yeah.
perspective that we're taking actually is.
I think that's good. I think we may have some language that is not included here, but we will look at that in context. Yes.
Okay, I had a few other, there's some places where I think we have conflicts or it's unclear. Detached one or two family dwelling, oh wait, I'm sorry, I read that one wrong. Lodging house in the residential is not permitted, but a guest house is permitted. There are a couple of other places where tiny house is permitted of a certain size, but we also permit accessory dwelling units that are of a different size. How do those even
Yes.
relate to each other?
So again, that's very, very important that we're always, much as this table should always be used with the map, the uses in the table should always be read with the definitions. So we've only included the definitions here that we have changed, but many of these uses do have definitions, including, I think, almost all of the ones that you just called out. So, I'm sorry, can you remind me?
I'm not sure if the definitions are gonna be differentiate enough to make a difference.
They do, I think most of the time. And tiny house is a new one, and I think the most important words in that tiny house definition, and this came from, again, the state and the new seasonal communities regulations, are that tiny houses are meant to be allowed as the principal dwelling on a lot. It's a little bit of interesting not to untie because we don't have a minimum size for our current either ADUs or principal dwelling. but we are coming into compliance with the seasonal community regulations and their required zoning by putting it in our zoning in this.
And yet it
form.
doesn't relate to lot size.
In any, I believe the requirement is that they're permitted, and I don't think you have to permit them everywhere, but they're permitted in places where you permit single-family residential districts.
And then
But maybe we call that out.
with your new definitions, which are fine, I guess, but those actually do make a potential change in what's allowed. I'm looking particularly in the residential district, like artisan industry. Why would that not be allowed in a residential district? People have studios in their homes, attached to their homes. They teach classes in their studios, in their kitchens currently.
So again, I think what you're raising are probably issues that we may want to look at under how we regulate home businesses and home occupations. I would say that is a separate conversation of trying to add this, again, very specific definition into our commercial districts. But I do think that is another section, perhaps at another time, that might be ripe for
Okay, so it's
revisiting.
prohibited in the residential district, and the same applies to the general definitions and talk about home-based businesses, which
Well,
you may think seems clear, but I didn't find it clear. And it seems to be prohibiting or requiring a special permit for businesses that are based in people's homes routinely, and that we even want to encourage more of, in theory, people working out of their homes.
Debbie, if I may, this is something that can become a big issue that needs a lot of discussion, where we draw the line at the commercialization of the residential district. And if you go to the definition of a customary home occupation, we have adjusted that a couple times over the last few years to separate out the home office that does not have employees or on-site sales is not even considered a customary home occupation. You can have one of those by right in your house. But once you get into the impacts in the single-family home district, that's when the town has decided it would rather have a public hearing to make sure there are no impacts where they're properly mitigated. So to leave that and go to something more permissive, I think might be a bigger and separate discussion than this one. But that's just my opinion. You know, you can certainly bring it forward if you want to.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, it's too restrictive, and we need to consider potential problems and address those potential problems, rather than say you're prohibited or make people feel like they have to hide something from, I don't know what. And as I say, we all know this, many people work out of their homes and sometimes have somebody come in as their assistant and work with them in their homes, or have clients come to their home. And if nobody even knows who they are, so that's not really it's not really a problem, and yet we're now saying it's prohibited.
I definitely see it as a land use category where how people, as you stated, how people are working out of their homes is evolving and changing. And I think taking another look at those thresholds, of which we might want to consider review or not review. But I think that's it's an excellent example of, let's make sure we're trying of what we group together in one article, like what is appropriate to group together in one article that we're gonna vote on here collectively. Like, I would not want the use table reorganization to be objected to because we're making changes to the way we regulate home occupations. So I think that's some of the challenge we have right now, is trying to figure out, okay, what do we package together in an article that we can vote on and say, this is, modernization of how we regulate land use and parking into something that's cleaner and more business friendly, versus we're gonna make a policy change on, again, home occupations. So I think that's the type of discussion we wanna have here tonight, and make sure that we are staying sort of on the same page.
Yeah, Except
this.
I would say we've made a new category that has not been agreed to.
Right.
And that there are probably just as many people working out of their homes or wanting to, who are gonna object to the whole thing because of that.
Okay.
So I don't think we should just ignore it. We can, unless we want to make a more clear statement about what is assumed, has always been assumed to be a home-based occupation, which I don't think is necessarily clear to everyone. So that if we're saying we're not actually making any changes to the kinds of home-based occupations that currently exist, then we should make that clear. To me, it does.
But, and again, unintended consequence, which is exactly what we want to be looking out for at this phase of the process.
And then, just so one other thing was, and this may be, you know, if we're gonna make definitions and give examples, you run the risk of, I can't find where to put a beauty salon or a yoga studio or a massage therapist or a salt cave in personal and consumer services based on the way we've defined it. I think we've made our definition a little narrow. And if we're gonna clean this up and try to open uses that are, you know, non-offensive in every area, then there must be some other way of using language to allow for those
If it's not
kinds of-
clear to you, it's not going to be clear to others, and so that is,
That's all I-
I mean, those I would all call
I was
personal
like,
services.
Is it medical? Is it
Yeah.
retail?
But let's take another look at that definition. So, I'm sorry, beauty salon, yoga, salt cave, I get it, yeah. Like,
Right?
if it's not clear that those things go in here, let's make sure it's clear.
Okay. Okay. That's- Anybody else? Peter, you wanted to comment?
I hesitate to raise this because I missed the last two meetings. I mentioned this a while ago, but I wouldn't expect anyone to remember it, when we mentioned how there might be, we were looking at the zoning regs. And there's one particular aspect of the zoning regulation that I've come across as an architect, which I'm now graduated. By the way, that's the word, not retired. Graduated, that's some friend of mine came up with that. Anyway, and that is, in Orleans, unlike any other town we ever have worked in, it states, under Article 5, Dimensional Requirement 164 5.2, building separation. Any building intended for human habitation shall be separated from any other such building on the same lot by a distance equal to the required side yard unless connected with a solid roof structure with a permanent floor to create usable space fit for occupancy or access between the two buildings. Okay, so, example, a house with a garage that has living space above. I might, and in fact, we did it, I think this was changed, and they added the thing about the permanent floor. Because we did a house in South Orleans, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that has a porte cochere, you know, between the main building. It's not 25 feet, but it's a roof structure. And, you know, you drive through it, so it's not a permanent floor. What this is saying is if I want to have my house and a garage, and I want to have them less than 25 feet, and dimensionally, 25 feet is quite a bit when you think about, you know, garage and what you really need. So you might want to do like a trellis, you know, that you walk through that connects them. But to have a permanent floor, to basically have living structure between, it totally changes architecturally what you can do. Unless you separate it 25 feet, which in many cases proportionally is going to look really dumb. So I don't understand where this thing originally came from, because no other town has anything like it. And I, you know, as I said, encountered it personally over the last 30 years in 3 different occasions. So I don't get it. I don't understand the value of that.
Debbie, if I may,
Sure.
I'll just tell you my recollection is, I think this was a fire safety question.
That's
It was on the books for 40 years. About 10 years ago, we talked to the fire chief and said, do you need that? 'Cause it used to say 2 times the side yard separation. So we reduced it to the required side yard separation, which is 25 feet in the residential, but also only 10 feet in the downtown areas.
Right, I'm talking about residential, which is 25.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So it's coming from the fire department.
at the same time, well, it came from I think it came from the fire department originally. At the same time, we talked to the fire department about party walls downtown and allowed them for the first time in that same time period, because the fire chief said, we have modern codes now. So the separations are not required to the same extent they were before. This is something we can certainly look at.
Yeah, I just think it doesn't make any sense, and it forces you to do something that wouldn't look great, and it doesn't allow you to do something, for instance, someone might just want to do a simple roofed connector between the two, or whatever, but they can't do that, because they have to have a floor underneath, and it's got to be living structure. It just doesn't make sense. And, when you say it's the fire department, I laugh because I think about, I remember what town I was in, we were doing something. And we were doing a road to the lot, and there were a couple houses on the lot. And they said, oh, you need to do I don't know, it was like a 30-foot wide lot, right? And the size of the roads getting there were much smaller. Well, we need to be able to get the fire engine in there and turn around. So anyway, when I heard fire department, I think it needs to be looked at. I think it's architecturally, I think it's a bad idea. I don't see any reason for it.
Do you think there's any value, if I may, do you think there's any value in maintaining, in a residential district, maintaining the separation between dwellings in the residential district, just for the land use fabric of the community, so it doesn't appear as dense in the single-family zoning district? It's just a thought.
What I would say is, show me another town that has that regulation, and then show me where that has a negative impact on the Chatham doesn't have that.
Chatham's vastly different than our residential districts.
No, I know, but I'm saying, on the residential lots, they don't have that. I'm not talking about the downtown. I'm saying on the residential lots, they don't have a requirement. And I can't think of buildings that I've spent a lot of time there, and saying, oh man, that looks really bad, how did they do that? So I don't know. I don't personally see it. I'd love to see other, what other towns do, and I don't think other towns have that restriction. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Anyway, sorry to throw that out now.
No, I remember when we had this conversation the first time, and I do think having a conversation with fire and building commissioner is a good place to start.
It shouldn't, there shouldn't be any reason for the fire, because if it's one building,
Yeah, it could be attached.
Seems like it would be
right,
more of an issue.
it's like that shouldn't be an issue,
Yeah,
so.
we have attached. And does that,
Sorry for being so passionate.
No, it's
does that relate to, because I did have one other point, and
Yeah.
I couldn't quite process where it might go or if it's even addressed. But in our new overlay district, with this thing talking about the adjustments to the downtown housing, as I recall, the way we set out the size of buildings that were to be on the lots with separations required, it would make it impossible to design a building in the traditional, very traditional Orleans form of a large house kind of building with an attached barn kind of building, and maybe with connectors to them or something like that. As I recall, there were issues with our setbacks and our separation requirements that made that something that couldn't happen. And like I said, like, why? It would be it would be nice. It would be a form that integrates beautifully with the historic houses up and down Main Street. And so if there's a way to, I'll look if you want, to find where that is and maybe correct that? Because I just don't see why that was,
I mean, absolutely. There are building separation requirements as well in the overlay district,
Yeah.
and they're based on building height. So if you have 1.5 stories, you have to have 10 feet. If you have 2.5 stories, you have to have 15 feet, I think,
Right.
for example. If you've seen that in the code, I would be very interested in having that conversation, because no, that was not the intent to prohibit that. And that's a great segue into Article 2, in that we're trying to learn where there may have been those unintended consequences
Yeah.
of things that we wrote or included in the code. Obviously, it was a big code. Obviously, it had a lot of moving pieces.
yeah.
We are finding, as we're having conversations with those who are looking to build under codes, that there are some unintended consequences. And I do think it's worth bringing an article forward, recognizing that, they're not mistakes. They're just things that, we didn't recognize were going to have that impact. Can we transition to this article, or
Sure.
were there more?
We were there, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I don't. I didn't know if there were other, did you have other questions under Article 1?
I don't, does anybody
I don't
else?
think so.
No.
All right.
Okay.
So again, Article 2, just that, the idea that we wrote a code, but we want it to be used. We want to encourage everybody to build as much attainable housing, year-round attainable housing downtown that we can. And as we've had some conversations with folks who are looking to potentially develop, here were the things that jumped out to us. So for example, the minimum ground story height in feet, putting that 11-foot minimum in, we heard is incompatible with modular construction, that there's not sort of that option to build an 11-foot minimum building height, that it has to be either 10 or 12. So we don't want to prohibit that. Next meeting, we're going to show you some building typologies that UTL put together, potential buildings that you could build under that code. They were having a hard time complying with the 60% requirement for ground story active use. So recommended that we change that to 50%. We were just talking about 0-foot party walls. We put that in the VC district, but didn't include it in the commercial center. I think it was just an omission, but now you could certainly read that to mean we meant to strictly prohibit it, which we don't want to do. So going through and fixing that, thinking that, again, under F lot standards, the written one, we have provisions now in our village center district that allow you to look at the minimum front yard setback in relationship to the buildings that are either on the lot or on lots adjacent. We didn't include that here in the overlay, so importing those provisions here. And then under building placement, I think we just wrote a very opaque regulation. I'm a big believer in plain language, and you should be able to understand what the zoning means. So just spelling out a little bit more clearly what we're trying to say there. We did, and I actually just got this email from Lauren. I haven't even opened it, but I know, again, in drawing up these building types that you can build under the code, I know Lauren said she was gonna have a recommendation to the dormer setbacks as well. So I think we're gonna wanna include those in there. I think maybe we have an issue with the frontage type where it's not totally clear what we're asking for either. But this would be Article 2, just like quick fixes to this zoning, just to make sure that it's usable and we're not running into problems. But we will also, Debbie, I'd love to follow up with you on the big house, little house, back house barn.
Believe me, I get this. I used to draft contracts for a living. I understand how opaque language becomes. But would you reread B and C? I think there's some articles missing, or they're not quite saying what I think you want them to say, or clearly saying it.
Okay, B and C?
Yeah.
I don't have those now, but we can, okay to follow up with those offline?
Yeah,
Okay,
either there's something missing, or I just don't get
okay.
it.
Yes, we will look at that.
I just think, it's a minimum setback for a front yard, or addition may, if smaller.
Oh, here, I'm sorry, the
What?
B and C here on the sheet.
Yeah.
Minimum setback for a front yard for new construction or additions may. smaller. O, if smaller than the minimum setback established in the code.
Yeah.
So the minimum setback in the code says you have to have an 8-foot minimum setback. But what we're saying is if there's an existing building on a lot that has a 4-foot minimum setback, you can build to that 4-foot minimum setback.
Okay.
But if it doesn't say that, then yes, let's look at it.
Sorry.
Oh, very
Not say
good.
that.
Clearer. I
And
will write
maybe
clearer.
just in paragraph C, outdoor space that is improved with pedestrian
Yeah.
amenities or improved consistent with a frontage type defined herein may contribute to the calculation of the facade build-out ratio.
Clearer. I get it. Clearer.
Huh?
Plain language. And so again, what this is saying is, we want a certain amount of space among the front yard to make sure that we're creating an active streetscape. We want it to be pedestrian oriented. We want it to be thoughtful, private development to be thoughtful with the way it interacts with the street. And that helps encourage walkability in your downtown. But we understand that there are lot constraints. But if you're building out, say, a patio next to your building in a way that is engaging and open to the public, we're going to allow you to count that as part of your minimum amount of space on your lot that has to be built out in this manner. So that's what that's trying to say.
Which sounds great.
Yes, I think it's an excellent
My
provision.
opinion.
But it just, yes, but we could tell that people weren't reading it. Obviously, we'll do another iteration. Plain language.
So you can just give me any language that you want to pass, dummies, zoning for dummies. and I'll
Yes,
read it and
again, I'm a
live if
big
I
believer that the code should just say what you mean. So it doesn't have to be written all in legalese. All right, so that is, are we good? Article 2? All right, so that's Article 2. And again, Article 3 are things that when we very first started this idea of cleaning up the bylaw, we gave our bylaw sort of in full over to our new folks over at Murphy Hesse, and we said, take a look, find what's not consistent with state code. We know there's always land use decisions that are evolving out of the court. Let's make sure we're up to date. So this is sort of coming back around to that idea. Things that, again, are duplicative in the code, let's take out the one that makes the most sense. We know there were a bunch of changes to housing definitions, specifically ADUs, under the Affordable Homes Act. Let's clean that up, make sure we're compliant. And I should say, and so I shouldn't, so I have to think about how I talk about this, because really this section on accessory uses is somewhat new. This largely came from FEBA, and so see, this is how we think about how we break this down into articles. It's not necessarily a legal issue, but it's definitely a sort of a gap or a hole or a vacuum within our code. Is most communities, many communities, as Peter was saying, we all sort of, a lot of them have the same sort of language and provisions. One of the things that we do not have within our zoning ordinance is any explicit acknowledgement that principal uses often come with a number of customary accessory uses that are related to them. So maybe I run a restaurant, but I also do some retail sales of merchandise and t-shirts on the side. So it's not the primary use here isn't retail sales, it's a restaurant, but there are, and again, there's a lot of sort of land use law behind this, customary and incidental accessory uses of property. Maybe you have a house, but you also have a garage, that garage where you park your car isn't the primary use, but it's a customary and recognized accessory use. We have no recognition in our code of accessory uses or ways to regulate them. So what we've added here are sort of the typical language that you will find in zoning bylaws across Massachusetts of ways to regulate accessory uses. And that's, again, giving it a definition, which, again, is recognizing that it is not the principal use, but that it is a minor and customary activity that's compatible with that primary use, but in smaller scale and intent. that they are allowed, and that generally they have to be on the same lot unless you're getting special permission for that. So that is what this would add in, and I do think it will be a benefit to both the building commissioner and the zoning board of appeals to recognize that. So that's new. We hadn't talked about that. The other one is just, again, cleaning up our language about how long special permits are valid for. Right now, it says special permits in the code are valid for 2 years. It does not provide any ability to extend that special permit. Under state law, special permits can be valid for up to 3 years. So what this does is simply amend our provisions for special permit expiration that says, hey, they're good for 2 years. You can come in and apply for a 3rd year. And after that 3rd year, you're out. You have to come in and get a new hearing, get a new permit, which is not always what happens, I think, in practice. So we added that in here as well. The last one is the most substantial, and I think I want to talk about in the most general terms, because again, I do think this is something that our legal counsel has to look at very closely. And I think we have very clear provisions on how we regulate things that don't comply with the ordinance. So things that were in place, lawfully permitted prior to changes in the bylaw, but now do not conform. So these non-conforming provisions in our bylaw. But this is a place where we saw substantial change in the state law over the last, I don't know, when did that change to 48 happen? Maybe like 6 or 7 years ago.
Something like that.
Anyway, they, I think, completely upended how most communities think about regulating non-conforming uses. They now basically say that, I don't even know it by heart, they now say that essentially, like, if you build something that doesn't comply and nobody appeals it or nobody complains after a period of 10 years, we think about it as lawfully non-conforming. So they set these new rules. There's a second one in here. But basically what we're doing is just reorganizing our non-conforming use section, bringing in these provisions of 40A, because now if you try to read our code and you try to figure out, like, okay, what's lawfully non-conforming or what's not lawfully conforming, you're only getting half the picture, right? You're getting what we regulate, but you're not getting the rules that the state provides at all. So I think it's fair that we give people the whole picture in terms of what we consider lawfully non-conforming, what we don't consider lawfully non-conforming, and that's what this reorganization does. It essentially imports the changes that were made to Mass General Law and sort of spells out, all right, so we sort of have a special category. We all know that there are sort of special categories under state law for single and two-family dwellings. Let's break this out. Everything else, you need special permit or variances for. And then, again, sort of separates how we think about we did a lot of this in the last time. We put all the non-conforming lot provisions together. Again, keeping those all together and, again, just reorganizing these sections. So, yep.
I have a question. So is largely what's happening here in Article 6 is this a incorporation of the new state code?
Yep.
And my question would be, in the new version, how would the Orleans code and the state code differ, if at all?
So they don't really. Again, I think the state code added these new protections, these new categories of protections that we didn't have or addressed before. Is that fair, George?
Yeah, I think this whole section needs to be, when we're comfortable with it, this did not come from legal counsel entirely, right?
No, it came from me. Legal counsel said, we just did this in Falmouth, look at theirs, and do what they did. So that was the direction they give us. So I took Falmouth's bylaw, imported essentially the unique Orleans provisions into the Falmouth bylaw, and I've given it back to them to say, take it.
I guess my question then is there any daylight between what the state says and what we're going to say?
No.
Okay,
No. We just want to pull in, again, it's about giving people the complete picture.
got it.
So I just wanted to test what we're doing here. So this is just saying that any alteration to single or two-family residence that doesn't increase the non-conforming nature of it is permitted by right.
Yep.
And there's a few other things that are permitted by right.
Yep.
In addition. So a question, does this change the 4,000 square foot issue? Not at all.
Not at
So
all.
we still are, if you're gonna add, which this was when I was on the zoning board, this is what we dealt with, 90% was adding something more than 4,000 square feet.
Yep.
And it didn't violate the 15% rule, coverage of lot. It didn't violate any setbacks. But it was more than 4,000. We're keeping that.
We're keeping that. That's not an issue of being non-conforming. That's a local rule that we've set a standard in our code that says we don't want more than 4,000 square feet of coverage,
Building coverage.
building coverage on a lot. So that doesn't have to do
Without
with,
special permit.
Well, we have
yeah,
said
unless by special permit.
we want to have a special permit if something's going to be
Bigger than that.
more than 4,000 square feet.
Correct.
Even if it meets all the other requirements.
So this would deal with an issue where maybe you have a structure and it's built within the setback. And what this is saying, and again, is the rule in Orleans and across Massachusetts, is you can keep that structure in the setback as long as you're not making it any taller, you're not getting any closer, you're keeping it exactly as it is. Yeah, you can go in and re-site it and put new windows in and do whatever it is you want to do. But if you are adding a second story, then you're in another category. So those are the types of rules that this sets out, like where you're not conforming with the zoning. That is a pathway. Again, that's sort of a limitation we've set within our own code that says, hey, we're going to create a pathway and now regulate around that standard. So yes, thank you, George. Full disclosure, this is a really complicated section. This took me a long time to even get this draft, but legal counsel, again, they advised this would be a good idea. We'll have them take a look at it and see what they think.
This is a huge lift to get to this point, so I think that there's a lot of great value to the town here. I think at some point, we just want to be able to clearly tell people in public hearing what's different, and that'll be a challenge.
What's different and what are we doing? Yeah, and so, I think that will, if we're all on board with this, I think that's sort of the next iteration of the discussion is, do we have the articles organized right? Like, is there anything we need to pull out and make their own article? Like, you brought up the artisan industry. Like, we want to make sure we are being the intent here is not to change anything unintentionally. Like, we want to be very clear about what we're putting forward, and we want to make sure that everything stays within the boundaries of what we were saying at town meeting. And if there is something, like things that we've raised tonight, that needs additional discussion, I'm not saying it's off the table, but maybe it just becomes its own article. So we don't get an up or down vote on what we want, the big things we want to accomplish as a result of some of the small things that may or may not be controversial.
Yeah, John.
So just a quick comment. So in summary, for all of this, and part of the way we want to deliver it, I think, to the public would be we're maximizing protections for the public while maximizing our flexibility for basically new business entities.
Yeah, and protections as much as, I think the ability for those who apply and enforce the code to be able to do so in a reliable and consistent manner. We want to give them the best tools that
Well,
they
to
have.
make it enforceable.
Yeah, correct, yeah. It consistently enforceable. I'm sorry, so maximizing protections while,
Maximizing potential protections while maximizing our flexibility for new business.
yeah.
So if we were able to, as just a final comment, so if we're able to find that proper balance where there is a comfort on the part of residents that they are still being protected by zoning in the proper way, the traditional way, but that we've created a mechanism by which we can be flexible and business-friendly without violating anything that we would say is a protection.
Right. I think that's
That's one way to look at it.
Well,
One way.
I think
Not
I think, aren't you
100% sure
in
that's-
general, trying to provide some additional clarity to the zoning regulations, so that someone who's trying to figure out what they can do has a clearer understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to me that that's the overarching, that we're modernizing this zoning code, which hasn't been updated in a comprehensive way since you said the 80s.
Right.
So we're
Careful of the word modernize.
Yeah.
taking into
Kind of a hard- It's kind of a
account,
difficult word, right?
Yeah. Think,
but we're taking into account the changes in state law, the changes in our own code that we've already
bring it up to-
adopted,
Bring it up to.
that's good.
and making sure that things are consistent and that we're not undermining ourselves by prohibiting something that in another section we want to be encouraging. That we've all agreed we want to be encouraging.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I feel like this
Thank you,
is a really
Elizabeth. That
good,
was
robust discussion and where we needed to be. So if I could just, Debbie, real quick, touch on schedule going forward. Again, I know the select board is going to vote on setting a fall town meeting date of November 16th. Very late town meeting, so that will be the special town meeting. I don't have the charter rules for warrant opening and closing in my brain. I'm sure George does.
I think the 23rd of September is going to be the final date the warrant is open.
Of September.
September,
Of September.
yeah.
Okay, so the warrant will open, I'm assuming sometime in August.
Right.
And according to George, will close the 23rd of September. So I think the way this proceeds is we continue through July and August to have conversations, folks who are using the code, who are administering the code. I know I haven't even gotten a chance to sit down with the building commissioner on this, like in a formal way. Again, anybody else sort of from the public who wants to comment, get some early feedback on this. I would like to try to target a public hearing for immediately after Labor Day. The planning board only has those 2 meetings in September, one on the 8th and one on the 22nd. So if we're looking at a warrant closing on the 23rd, then I would say let's look at a potential public hearing on these on September 8th. The only issue being that happens to be the day after Labor Day, but that feels unavoidable to me.
So if we have one meeting in August, I think it would be valuable to have town council review of the applicability section and to have these in a little, of the articles sort of formed for the planning board to vote to hold a hearing. And there's no, you're not compelled, you're just voting to hold a hearing. You're not saying you're going to go forward with the articles. That's an easy lift. And then we can advertise everything for the 8th,
So articles in a final form in August,
or at least in public hearing form, yeah.
public hearing form in August with a vote to hold a public hearing on the 8th.
Right.
And then after that, we'd have to have a vote to forward to the selectmen for consideration.
And that gives you 2 meetings. If you hear the initial public hearing and you want to think about things before you go forward, you'll have, when you go to the second meeting, you'll have 1 day to decide. So, and we can forward everything to the select board, because
I
it'll be
think the
ready.
select board have made accommodations for that in the way they hear the articles and place the articles.
And then I just want to open the door to us thinking about whether this is a really big bite to do at once, and potentially things could be separated. These articles could be separated. I just think this is a lot, I think, to digest at a town meeting, and I don't know.
Yeah.
And I
No,
would say
right.
even for the public hearing,
Yeah.
that maybe I don't know, we're kind of rushing through the calendar, the dates, but if we want to prioritize what people are talking about, like the use table, the technical legal changes are, I think, would be pretty non-controversial if they're technical and legal.
I don't want to be
Doesn't really
dismissive
matter
of
what
Articles
people's-
2 and 3, but I feel like they'll generate less discussion
Right.
than, and maybe they're in the wrong order here. Maybe that's a conversation.
But,
Start easy or start hard?
Start
right?
easy or start hard, right?
yeah, so we want to
So-
have, especially solicit feedback on those, on that. And hear from people how things might have unintended consequences that really make a difference.
Right. Okay.
Okay? Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Excellent. No, thank you. Very good.
Ready to move to our approval of planning board minutes for the meeting of June 23rd. Have a motion,
So moved?
second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will approve the meeting, the minutes. And future agenda items, think, big one is the zoning.
We have three things that came up. We'll put the committee representatives back on there. It sounds like the building typologies will be coming.
Oh, yep.
And then, or, I don't know if you do those before or after. And then review of the public hearing materials in August to see if you're ready to schedule a public hearing. So I think that's plenty for a summer meeting.
It is.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I wanted to ask about one item. As a follow-up to the planning document, we were going to talk about metrics. When were you thinking?
The comp plan,
Yeah.
Yeah, how
the
we
met-
met.
We would talk about that
so that,
after, like, yeah.
yeah, I think there's not an emergency on that, certainly.
No emergency.
But it's something that we want to see happen. So, I feel like that's a fall, winter project
Okay.
when we've got some time and ability. And if we move all the zoning this fall, we've got some bandwidth and time available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've got some ideas on that. You may have seen the community indicators, and if we did some work on that last year, if we can adjust those a little bit, they may be easily identifiable and updatable and show us where we're at.
Okay. And if there's nothing else that anyone wants to say today, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.